You probably think you've seen every kind of horse out there. The big, majestic ones, the tiny ponies, the sleek racehorses, but I'm willing to bet you've never even heard of some of the horses I'm about to show you. These breeds are so rare, so hidden in remote corners of the world, that even most horse lovers don't know they exist. And the wildest part? Some of them are on the edge of disappearing forever. Let's dive into the 10 rarest, most surprising horse breeds you didn't even know existed. And trust me, number 3 will completely change how you think about what a horse can be. 1. The majestic, Spain's forgotten marsh horse. So let's start in the wetlands of southern Spain, where the land meets the sea in a tangle of saltwater, mud, and wild grass. That's home to one of Europe's oldest and most overlooked horse breeds, the majestic. Now, at first glance, you might mistake it for a small Andalusian. Same graceful neck, same confident step. But the majestic is tougher. It's been shaped by generations of surviving in Spain's Donana marshlands, an environment that's brutal. Think endless mosquitoes, sudden floods, and zero dry ground half the year. These horses learn to swim through waterlogged terrain and forage on salty plants that most animals wouldn't touch. For centuries, they worked alongside local cattle herders, the vaqueros, and became part of the region's culture. But then, modernization hit. Tractors replaced horses. The wetlands shrank. The breed almost vanished. Today, fewer than 1,000 pure majestic remain, mostly managed by conservationists who round them up once a year for traditional festivals. They're not fancy show horses, but they carry something special, a living memory of how wild Spain used to be. 2. The Namib Desert Horse, Africa's mysterious survivor. Now imagine horses running through the desert, not the soft sand of a beach, but the blazing, bone-dry Namib Desert in southern Africa. That's where the Namib Desert Horse lives, and nobody fully knows how they got there. Some say they descended from German cavalry horses during World War I. Others believe shipwrecks along the Skeleton Coast brought them centuries ago. Either way, they've adapted to one of the harshest environments on the planet. They can go days without water, their coats glisten like bronze in the sun, and their bodies have evolved to conserve every drop of moisture. Watching them move across those dunes feels unreal, like a mirage that just happens to be alive. Today, fewer than 200 remain, protected in Namibia's Garib Plains. Scientists study them to understand how mammals can adapt so fast to extreme conditions. It's wild to think. Out there, in one of the driest places on Earth, there's still a band of wild horses surviving completely on their own terms. 3. The banker horse, America's island secret. You wouldn't expect to find wild horses living on beaches, but off the coast of North Carolina, on the Outer Banks, there's a breed that's done just that for centuries. They're called banker horses, and they might just be America's best-kept equine secret. They descend from Spanish horses that swam ashore from shipwrecks in the 1500s. Yep, literal shipwreck survivors. These horses adapted to life on narrow islands with limited food and fresh water, eating dune grasses and drinking from rain pools. They're small, sturdy, and incredibly resourceful, like survival experts with manes. But their story's bittersweet. Tourists love seeing them, but their population is declining because of shrinking habitats and genetic isolation. Conservationists now manage the herds carefully, sometimes even using DNA testing to protect their lineage. If you ever visit the Outer Banks and you spot a wild horse standing against the ocean breeze, that's not just a random pony. That's living history, quietly holding on to a 500-year-old legacy. 4. The Vyatka, Russia's tough little powerhouse. Heading north to Russia, where winters can last half the year, there's a small, tough horse that's been quietly serving farmers and soldiers for centuries. The Vyatka. Think of it like the compact SUV of the horse world. Not flashy, not fast, but built to handle anything. It has a thick mane, zebra-like stripes on its legs, and hooves so strong it rarely needs shoes. The Vyatka was bred by peasants for work, transportation, and military use. During the 19th century, it was prized for being reliable and low maintenance, until industrialization almost wiped it out. By the 20th century, fewer than 100 were left. But in recent years, Local breeders have revived it through community programs in Kirov and Udmurtia. Now, these horses are making a quiet comeback. They're still rare, only a few thousand exist, but if you need a horse that laughs in the face of snowstorms, this is the one. 5. The Sumba and Sumbawa ponies, Indonesia's island treasures. Let's jump across the globe to Indonesia, where horses are surprisingly a huge part of island life. On two neighboring islands, Sumba and Sumbawa, live two little-known but incredibly important breeds, the Sumba and Sumbawa ponies. These aren't pampered show ponies. They're small, muscular, and unbelievably tough, built to climb volcanic slopes and handle tropical heat. For centuries, they've been used in ceremonies, racing, and traditional games like pasola, a wild ritualized spear-throwing competition that's basically medieval polo on steroids. Locals believe the ponies carry spiritual energy, and owning one is a mark of pride. What's wild is how ancient their lineage might be. Some genetic studies suggest they could trace back to early Chinese and Arabian horses, brought by sea traders hundreds of years ago. They're still used daily for transportation and farming in remote villages. But modernization is catching up fast, and their numbers are slowly shrinking as motorbikes replace them. They might be small, but in their homeland, they represent strength, identity, and survival. 6. The Kiger Mustang, the wild spirit of Oregon. If you've ever seen Disney's Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, yeah, that's a Kiger Mustang. But most people don't realize this breed actually exists in real life, and it's one of the most genetically pure wild horse herds in the U.S. They were discovered in the 1970s during a government roundup in Oregon. When researchers tested their DNA, they realized these horses were direct descendants of Spanish conquistador horses from the 1600s. Their distinctive look, dun coloring, black mane and tail, and primitive markings comes straight from their Iberian ancestors. Kiger Mustangs are known for their agility, intelligence, and that fierce don't-mess-with-me energy. They still live wild in two remote Oregon herd management areas, where each roundup helps preserve their bloodlines. They're living proof that Spanish horses didn't just vanish after the conquistadors left. Some went rogue and built their own legacy in the wild American West. 7. The Bhutia horse, India's mountain traveler. Now, up in the Himalayas, where oxygen is thin and trails are carved into cliffs, lives a breed that's almost invisible to the modern world, the Bhutia horse. These horses come from Sikkim and Darjeeling, regions bordering Nepal and Bhutan. They're small but incredibly hardy, able to carry heavy loads across freezing, narrow mountain passes where even jeeps can't go. Locals say Bhutia horses have a sixth sense for danger. They can feel when a rock path is about to crumble or when snow is about to slide. They've been companions to mountain traders, monks, and soldiers for generations. Yet few outside their region even know they exist. With modernization, their role has faded, and purebred Bhutias are becoming rare. But for the people of the Himalayas, they're still more than just transport animals. They're lifelines. 8. The Basuto pony, the little warrior of Lesotho. Let's go back to southern Africa, this time to the tiny, mountainous kingdom of Lesotho. Here, horses aren't luxury animals. They're survival tools, and the Basuto pony might just be one of the toughest breeds on earth. They're small, maybe 13 or 14 hands high, but don't let that fool you. They can scale rocky cliffs and narrow trails that would stop most larger horses cold. These ponies developed from Cape horses brought by Dutch settlers in the 1600s, later adapted to Lesotho's steep, cold terrain. They're the main form of transport for many Basotho people even today. And get this, during wars, these ponies carried soldiers across terrain that tanks couldn't handle. That's how tough they are. Sadly, modern breeding has diluted their genetics, and pure Basuto ponies are now rare. But those who know them swear they're the most dependable horses you'll ever meet. Brave, smart, and born mountain climbers. 9. The Newfoundland pony, Canada's forgotten workhorse. Back in the cold North Atlantic, there's another little-known survivor, the Newfoundland pony. These horses were once the backbone of rural life in eastern Canada, pulling carts, working fields, and hauling fishing gear. They came from a mix of British breeds brought by settlers in the 1600s, Exmoor, Dartmoor, Welsh, and others, and adapted to the harsh, icy climate of Newfoundland. They're compact, smart, and extremely gentle. Locals say they understand people like no other breed, but as tractors and cars replaced them, the population crashed. By the 1970s, there were fewer than 100 left. Today, small conservation groups are fighting to bring them back, and you'll find only about 500 remaining. They might not look glamorous, but they're part of Canada's heart, quiet, strong, and loyal to the end. 10. The Tursk horse, the Arabian's Russian cousin. And finally, let's end with a horse that looks elegant enough for a royal portrait, but comes with a surprising twist. The Tursk horse from Russia. It's like the Arabian's cold-weather cousin. Same fine head, same graceful movement, but with a thicker coat and sturdier frame. The Tursk was created in the 20th century by crossing Arabians with native Russian breeds to produce a horse that could handle both beauty and brutal winters. These horses were bred for endurance races, military work, and ceremonial duties. They're known for their incredible stamina and calm temperament, but with the fall of the Soviet Union, breeding programs collapsed, and the Tursk became nearly extinct. Now, only a few small studs in Russia and Eastern Europe keep the line alive. They might not be famous, but they represent one of the most successful and least known breeding experiments in modern history. So there you have it, 10 horse breeds that most people don't even know exist. Each one tells a story of adaptation, survival, and the deep bond between humans and horses, from marshlands and mountains to icy coasts and desert dunes. It's crazy how these animals have evolved alongside us, yet so many have been forgotten. If you made it this far, you're clearly as fascinated by horses as I am. So don't stop here. Hit subscribe and check out the next video. It's going to blow your mind even more.